The first lay of Helgi Hundingcid. It was in times of yore, when the eagle screamed, holy waters fell from the heavenly hills. Then to Helgi, the great of soul, Borghild gave birth in Bralund. In the mansion it was night, the Norns came, who should the prince's life determine. They him decreed a prince most famed to be, and of leaders accounted best. With all their might they spanned the fatal threads, when that he Burg should overthrow, in Bralund. They stretched out the golden cord, and beneath the middle of the moon's mansion fixed it. East and west they hid the ends where the prince had lands between. Towards the north Neri's sister cast a chain, which she bade last for ever. One thing disquieted the Ylfing's offspring, and the woman who had the child brought forth. Sitting on a lofty tree, on prey intent, a raven to a raven said, "I know something. Stands cased in mail Sigmund's son, one day old. Now is our day come. His eyes are piercing as a warrior's. The wolf's friend he is. We shall rejoice. He to the folk appeared a noble chief to be. Among men 'twas said that happy times were come. Went the king himself from the din of war, noble garlic to bring to the young happy prince. Gave him the name of Helgi, and Hringstadir, Solfjol, Snæfjol, and Sigarsvellir, Hringstad, Hetun, and him Vangar, a sword ornate, to Sinfiotli's brother. Then grew up in his friend's bosom the high-born youth, in joyous splendour. He paid and gave gold for deserts, nor spared the chief the blood-stained sword. A short time only the leader let warfare cease. When the prince was 15 winters old, he caused the fierce Hunding to fall, who long had ruled over lands and people. The sons of Hunding afterwards demanded from Sigmund's son treasure and rings, because they had on the prince to avenge their great loss of wealth and their father's death. The prince would neither the blood fine pay, nor for the slain indemnity would give. They might expect, he said, a terrific storm of grey arrows and Odin's ire. The warriors went to the trysting place of swords, which they had appointed at Logafjol. Broken was Frodi's peace with the foes. Vidrir's hounds went about the isle slaughter greedy. The leader sat under the Arastein, after he had slain Alf and Eyjolf, Hiorvard and Harvard, sons of Hunding. He had destroyed all of Gemimir's race. Then gleamed a ray from Logafjol, and from that ray lightning issued. Then appeared in the field of air a helmed band of Valkyr. Their corslets were with blood besprinkled, and from their spears shone beams of light. Forthwith inquired the chieftain bold, from the wolf congress of the southern Disir, whether they would with the warriors that night go home. Then was a clash of arms. One from her horse, Hogni's daughter, stilled the crash of shields, and to the leader said, "We have, I ween, other objects, than with princely warriors to drink beer. My father has his daughter promised to the fierce son of Granmar, but I have Helgi, declared Hodbrod, the proud prince, like to a cat's son. That chief will come in a few days, unless thou call to a hostile meeting, or the maiden take from the prince. Helgi, fear thou not a son's slayer. There shall be first a clash of foes, unless I am dead." Then sent messengers the potent prince through air and over water, succours to demand, and abundance of ocean's gleam to men to offer unto their sons. Bid them speedily to the ships to go, and those from Brandey to hold them ready. There the king abode, until thither came warriors in hundreds from Hedensea. From the strands also, and from the Stafnesses, a naval force went out, with gold adorned. Helgi, then of Hiorleif, asked, "Hast thou mustered the valiant people?" But the young king the other answered, "Slowly," said he, "are counted from Truniri the long-beaked ships under the seafarers, which sail without the Oresund. 1,200 faithful men, though in Hetun there is more than half of the king's host. We are to war inured." Then the steersman threw the ship's tents aside, that the prince's people might awake, and the noble chiefs the dawn might see, and the warriors hauled the sails up to meet the mast in Varen's fjord. There was a dash of oars and clash of iron, shield against shield resounded. The Vikings rowed, warring went, under the chieftains, the royal fleet far from the land. So might be heard when together came the tempest's sister, and the long keels, as when rock and surge on each other break. Higher still bade Helgi the deep sail be hauled. No port gave shelter to the crews, when Oegir's terrific daughter the chieftain's vessel would o'erwhelm. But from above Sigrun intrepid saved them and their fleet also, from the hand of Ran, powerfully was wrested the royal ship at Knickpoland. At eve they halted in Unvagar. The splendid ships might into port have floated, but the crews from Svarinshaug in hostile mood espied the host. Then demanded the god-born Gudmund, who is the chieftain that commands the fleet, and that formidable force brings to our land. Sinfiotli said, slinging up the yard a red-hued shield with golden rim. He at the strait kept watch, and able was to answer, and with noble words exchange. Tell it at eve, when you feed your pigs and your dogs lead to their food, that the Ylfings from the east are come, ready to fight at Gnipalund. Hodbrod with Helgi find in the fleet's mist a king hard to make flee, who has oft the eagle sated, while thou wast in at mills kissing the thrall wenches. Gudmund. Little dost thou remember of ancient saws, when of the noble thou falsehoods utterest. Thou hast been eating wolves' dainties, and of thy brother wast the slayer. Wounds hast thou often sucked with cold mouth. Everywhere loathed, thou hast crawled in caverns. Sinfiotli. Thou wast a Valkrone in Varensi, cunning as a fox, a spreader of lies. Thou saidst thou no man wouldst ever marry, no coarse-lidded warrior save Sinfiotli. A mischievous crone was thou, a giantess, a Valkyrie, insolent, monstrous in Allfather's hall. All the Einherjar fought with each other, deceitful woman, for thy sake. 9 wolves we begat in Saguns, I alone was father of them all. Gudmund. Father thou wast not of Fenris wolves, older than all, as far as I remember, since by Gnipalund the Thurs maidens thee emasculated upon Thorsness. Thou wast Siggeir's stepson, at home under the benches layest, accustomed to the wolf's howl out in the forest. Calamity of every kind came over thee, when thou didst lacerate thy brother's breast. Notorious thou madst thyself by thy atrocious works. Sinfiotli. Thou wast Grani's bride at Bolver, hadst a golden bit, ready for the course. Many a time have I ridden thee tired, hungry, and saddled through the fells, thou hag. Gudmund. A graceless lad thou wast thought to be, when Gulnir's goats thou didst milk. Another time thou wast a giantess's daughter, a tattered wretch. Wilt thou a longer chat? Sinfiotli. I rather would at Frekastein the ravens cram with thy carcass, than thy dogs lead to their meat, or thy hogs feed. May the fiend deal with thee. Helgi. Much more seemly, Sinfiotli, would it be for you both in battle to engage, and the eagles gladden, than with useless words to contend, however princes may foster hate. Not good to me appear Granmar's sons, yet 'tis right that princes should speak the truth. They have shown, at Moinsheimar, that they have courage to draw the sword. Rapidly they their horses made to run, Svipud and Svegiud, to Solheimar. Over dewy dales, dark mountain sides, trembled the sea of mist, where the men went. The king they met at the burg's gate, to the prince announced the hostile advent. Without stood Hodbrod, with helmet decked. He the speed noticed of his kinsmen. Why have ye Hniflungs such wrathful countenances? Hither to the shore are come rapid keels, towering masts and long yards, shields many, and smooth-shaven oars, a king's noble host, joyous Ylfings. 15 bands are come to land, but they are out at sea, before Nibelund. 7,000 blue-black ocean beasts with gold adorned. There is by far their greatest multitude. Now will Helgi not delay the conflict. Hodbrod. Let a bridled steed to the chief assembly run, but Sportfitnir to Sparenshide, Melnir and Milnir to Myrkvid. Let no man stay behind of those whose swords can brandish. Summon to you Hogni, and the sons of Hring, Atli and Yngvi, Alf the Old, they will gladly engage in conflict. We will let the Volsungs find resistance. It was a whirlwind when together came the fallow blades at Frekastein. Ever was Helgi Hundingsbani foremost in the host. Where men together fought, ardent for battle, disdaining flight, the chieftain had a valiant heart. Then came a maid from the heaven helmed. From above the clash of arms increased, for the king's protection. Then said Sigrun, well skilled to fly in the host of heroes from Hugin's grove: Unscathed shalt thou, prince, possess thy people, pillar of Yngvi's race, and life enjoy. Thou hast laid low the slow of flight, the chief who caused the dread warrior's death. And thee, O king, well beseem both red gold rings and a powerful maid. Unscathed shalt thou, prince, both enjoy Hogni's daughter and Ring's study of victory and lands. Then is conflict ended. The Lay of Helgi, Hiorvard's son. There was a king named Hiorvard, who had 4 wives, one of whom was named Alfid, their son was named Hayden. The second was named Sered, their son was named Hunglung. The third was named Sinriod. Their son was Himling. King Hiorvard made a vow that he would have to wife the most beautiful woman he knew of, and was told that King Svafnir had a daughter of incomparable beauty, named Sigrlinn. He had a jarl named Idmund, whose son Atli was sent to demand the hand of Sigrlinn for the king. He stayed throughout the winter with King Svafnir. There was a jarl there named Franmar, who was the foster father of Sigrlinn, and had a daughter named Alof. This jarl advised that the maiden should be refused, and Atli returned home. One day, when the jarl's son Atli was standing in a grove, there was a bird sitting in the boughs above him, which had heard that his men called the wives which King Hiorvard had the most beautiful. The bird talked, and Atli listened to what it said. The bird said, "Hast thou seen Sigrlinn Svafnir's daughter, of maidens fairest, in her pleasant home? Though fair the wives of Hiorvard seem to men in Glassislund." Atli. With Atli, Idmund's son, sagacious bird, wilt thou further speak? Bird. I will if the prince will offer to me, and I may choose what I will from the king's court. Atli. Choose not Hiorvard, nor his sons, nor the fair daughters of that prince, nor the wives which the king has. Let us together bargain. That is the part of friends. Bird. A fane I will choose, offer steeds many, gold-horned cows from the chief's land, if Sigrlinn sleep in his arms, and unconstrained with that prince shall live. This took place before Atli's journey, but after his return, when the king asked his tidings, he said, "Labour we have had, but errand none performed. Our horses failed us in the vast fell. We had afterwards a swampy lake to ford, then was denied us Fafnir's daughter with rings adorned, whom we would obtain." The king commanded them to go a second time, and also went himself. But when they had ascended a fell, and saw in Svafland the country on fire, and a great reek from the horses of cavalry, the king rode down the fell into the country, and took up his night quarters by a river. Atli kept watch and crossed the river, and came to a house on which sat a great bird to guard it, but was asleep. Atli shot the bird dead with an arrow. In the house he found the king's daughter, Sigrlinn, and Alof, daughter of Franmar, and brought them both away with him. The jarl Franmar had taken the form of an eagle, and protected them from a hostile army by sorcery. There was a king named Hrodmar, a wooer of Sigrlinn. He had slain the king of Svavaland, and ravaged and burnt the country. Hiorvard obtained Sigrlinn, and Atli Alof. Hiorvard and Sigrlinn had a son tall and comely. He was taciturn, and had no fixed name. He was sitting on a mound when he saw 9 Valkyries, one of whom was a most noble aspect. She said, "Late wilt thou, Helgi, rings possess, a potent warrior, a Rodulsvellir. So at morn the eagle sang, if thou art ever silent, although thou, prince, a fierce mood mayest show." Helgi. What wilt thou let accompany the name of Helgi, maid of aspect bright, since that thou art pleased to give me? Think well over that thou art saying. I will not accept it, unless I have thee also. Valkyrie. Swords I know lying in Sigar's home, fewer by 4 than 5 times 10. One of them is of all best, of shields the bale with gold adorned. A ring is on the hilt, courage in the midst, and the point terror for his use who owns it. Along the edge a blood-stained serpent lies, and on the guard the serpent casts its tail. There was a king named Eilima, Svava was his daughter. She was a Valkyrie, and rode through air and water. It was she who gave Helgi that name, and afterwards often protected him in battle. Helgi said, "Hiorvard, thou art not a king of wholesome counsel, leader of people, renowned though thou mayest be. Thou hast let fire devour the homes of princes, though harm to thee they none have done. But Hrodmar shall of the rings dispose, which our relations have possessed. That chief recks little of his life. He thinks only to obtain the heritage of the dead." Hiorvard answers that he will supply Helgi with an army if he will avenge his mother's father. Helgi thereupon seeks the sword that Svava had indicated to him. Afterwards he and Atli went and slew Hrodmar, and performed many deeds of valour. He killed the Jotun Hati, as he sat on a crag. Helgi and Atli lay with their ships in Hatfjord. Atli kept watch in the first part of the night. Hrimgerd, Hati's daughter, said, "Who are the chieftains in Hatfjord? With shields are your ships bedecked, boldly ye bear yourselves. Few things ye fear, I ween. Tell me how your king is named." Atli. Helgi is his name, but thou nowhere canst to the chief do harm. Iron forts are around the prince's fleet, giantesses may not assail us. Hrimgerd. How art thou named, most powerful champion? How do men call thee? Thy king confides in thee, since in the ship's fair prow he grants thee place. Atli. Atli I am named, fierce I shall prove to thee. Towards giantesses I am most hostile. The human prow I have oft occupied, and the night rider slain. How art thou called, corpse-greedy giantess? Hag, name thy father. 9 rash shouldst thou be underground, and a forest grow on thy breast. Hrimgerd. Hrimgerd I am called, Hati was my father called, whom I knew the mightiest Jotun. He many women had from their dwellings taken, until him Helgi slew. Atli. Thou wast hag, before the prince's ships, and layest before them in the fjord's mouth. The chieftain's warriors thou wouldst to Ran consign, had a bar not crossed thee. Now, Atli, thou art wrong, methinks thou art dreaming. Thy brows thou lettest over thy eyelids fall. My mother lay before the prince's ships, I, Hlodvard's sons, drowned in the ocean. Thou wouldst nay, Atli, if thou wert not a gelding. See Hrimgerd cocks her tail. Thy heart, methinks, Atli, is in thy hinder part, although thy voice is clear. Atli. I think I shall the stronger prove if thou desirest to try, and I can step from the port to land. Thou shalt be soundly cudgelled, if I heartily begin, and let thy tale fall, Hrimgerd. Hrimgerd. Just come on shore, Atli, if in thy strength thou trustest, and let us meet in Varinsvik. A rib roasting thou shalt get, brave boy, if in my claws thou comest. Atli. I will not come before the men awake, and o'er the king hold watch. It would not surprise me if from beneath our ship some hag arose. Hrimgerd. Keep watch, Atli, and to Hrimgerd pay the blood fine, for Hati's death. If one night she may sleep with the prince, she for the slain will be indemnified. Helgi. Lodin is named he who shall thee possess. Thou to mankind art loathsome. In Thali dwells that Thurs, that dog-wise Jotun, of all rock-dwellers the worst. He is a fitting man for thee. Hrimgerd. Helgi would rather have her, who last night guarded the port and men, the gold-bright maiden. She, methought, had strength. She stepped from port to land, and so secured your fleet. She was alone the cause that I could not the king's men slay. Helgi. Hear now, Hrimgerd, if I may indemnify thee, say fully to the king, was it one being only that saved the prince's ships, or went many together? Hrimgerd. 3 troops of maidens, though one maid foremost rode, bright with helmed head. Their horses shook themselves, and from their manes there sprang dew into the deep dales, hail on the lofty trees, whence comes fruitfulness to man. To me all that I saw was hateful. Atli. Look eastward now, Hrimgerd, whether Helgi has not stricken thee with death-bearing words. By land and water the king's fleet is safe, and the chief's men also. It is now day, Hrimgerd, and Atli has thee detained to thy loss of life. A ludicrous haven mark 'twill indeed be, where thou a stone image standest. King Helgi was a renowned warrior. He came to King Eylimi, and demanded his daughter Svava. Helgi and Svava were united, and loved each other ardently. Svava was a Valkyrie as before. Hedin was at home with his father, King Hiorvard in Norway. Returning home alone from the forest on Yule Eve, Hedin met a troll wife riding on a wolf, with serpents for reins, who offered to attend him, but he declined her offer, whereupon she said, "Thou shalt pay for this at Bragi Cup." In the evening solemn vows were made, and the sun hog was led forth, on which the guests laid their hands, and then made solemn vows at the Bragi Cup. Hedin bound himself by a vow to possess Svava, the beloved of his brother Helgi, but repented it so bitterly that he left home and wandered through wild paths to the southern lands, and there found his brother Helgi. Helgi said, "Welcome art thou, Hedin. What new tidings canst thou give from Norway? What art thou, prince, from the land driven, and alone art come to find us?" Hedin. Of a much greater crime I am guilty. I have chosen a royal daughter, thy bride at Bragi Cup. Helgi. Accuse not thyself. A true will prove words at drinking uttered by us both. Me a chieftain has to the strand summoned. Within 3 nights I must be there. 'Tis to me doubtful whether I return. Then may well be such befall, if it so must be. Hedin. Thou saidst, Helgi, that Hedin will deserved of thee, and great gifts. It would beseem thee better thy sword to redden, than to grant peace to thy foes. Helgi so spoke, for he had a foreboding that his death was at hand, and that his Fjögir, attendant spirit, had accosted Hedin, when he saw the woman riding on a wolf. There was a king named Alf, a son of Hrodmar, who had appointed a place of combat with Helgi in Sigar's plain within 3 days. Then said Helgi, "On a wolf rode at evening twilight a woman who him offered to attend. She well knew that the son of Sigarlinn would be slain on Sigar's plain. There was a great conflict, in which Helgi got his death wound. Helgi sent Sigar riding, after Eylimi's only daughter. He bade her quickly be in readiness, if she would find the king alive. Sigar. Helgi has me hither sent with thee, Svava, thyself to speak. Thee, said the king, he would fain see, ere the noble-born breathes forth his last. Svava. What has befallen Helgi, Hiorvard's son? I am sorely by affliction stricken. Has the sea him deluded, or the sword wounded? On that man I will harm inflict. Sigar. This morning fell at Frekastein the king who beneath the sun was of all the best. Alf has complete victory, though this time it should not have been. Helgi. Hail to thee, Svava! Thy love thou must abide. This in this world, methinks, is our last meeting. They say the chieftain's wounds are bleeding. The sword came too near my heart. I pray thee, Svava, weep not, my wife, if thou wilt my voice obey, that for Hedin thou a couch prepare, and the young prince in thy arms clasp. Svava. I had said in our pleasant home, when me for Helgi ring selected, that I would not gladly, after my king's departure, an unknown prince clasp in my arms. Hedin. Kiss me, Svava. I will not return, Rogheim to behold, nor Roda's field, before I have avenged Hiorvard's son, who was of kings under the sun the best. And Helgi and Svava were, it is said, born again. A footnote on Bragi's cup. At Guild the Bragi cup was drunk. It was the custom at the funeral feast of kings and jarls, that the heir should sit on a lower seat until the Bragaful was brought in, that he should then rise to receive it, make a vow, and drink the contents of the cup full. He was then led to his father's high seat. At an offering guild, the chief signed with the figure of Thor's hammer, both the cup and the meat. First was drunk Odin's cup, for victory and power to the king, then Niord's cup, and Frey's, for good year and peace, after which it was the custom with many to drink a brag of full. The peculiarity of this cup was, that it was a cup of vows, that on drinking it a vow was made to perform some great and arduous deed, that might be made a subject for the song of Skald. The second lay of Helgi Hundingcid. King Sigmund, son of Volsung, had to wife Borghild of Bralund. They named their son Helgi, after Helgi Hiorvard's son. Helgi was fostered by Hagal. There was a powerful king named Hunding, after whom the land was called Hundland. He was a great warrior, and had many sons, who were engaged in warfare. There was enmity, both open and concealed, between King Hunding and King Sigmund, and they slew each other's kinsmen. King Sigmund and his kindred were called Volsungs and Ylfings. Helgi went forth and secretly explored the court of King Hunding. Hemming, Hunding's son, was at home. On departing, Helgi met a herdsman and said, Say thou to Hemming that Helgi bears in mind who the mailed warrior was, whom the men laid low, when the grey wolf he had within, and King Hunding thought it was Hamal. Hamal was the son of Hagal. King Hunding sent men to Hagal in search of Helgi, and Helgi had no other way to save himself than by taking the clothes of a female slave and going to grind. They sought but did not find him. Then said Blind the baleful, Sharp are the eyes of Hagal's thrall wench, of no churlish race is she who at the mill stands. The millstones are split, the receiver flies asunder. Now a hard fate has befallen the warrior, when a prince must barley grind. Much more fitting to that hand is the falchion's hilt than a mill handle. Hagal answered and said, No wonder 'tis that the receiver rattles, when a royal damsel the hand turns. She hovered higher than the clouds, and like the Vikings dared to fight, until Helgi made her captive. She is a sister of Sigar and Hogni, therefore has fierce eyes the Ylfing maid. Helgi escaped and went on board a ship of war. He slew King Hunding, and was afterwards named Helgi Hundingsbani, and lay with his force in Brunavagar, and carried on strand hog, and ate raw flesh. There was a king named Hogni, whose daughter was Sigrun. She was a Valkyrie, and rode through the air and over the sea. She was Svava regenerated. Sigrun rode to Helgi and said, What men cause a ship along the coast to float? Where do ye warriors a home possess? What awaits ye in Brunavagar? Whither desire ye to explore away? Helgi. Heimel causes a ship along the coast to float. We have home in Helsi. A fair wind we await in Brunavagar. Eastward we desire to explore our way. Sigrun, where, O prince, hast thou wakened war, or fed the birds of conflict's sisters? Why is thy corslet sprinkled with blood? Why beneath the helm eat ye raw flesh? Helgi, it was the Ylfing's son last achievement, if thou desirest to know, west of the ocean, that I took bears in Bragalund, and the eagle's race with our weapons sated. Now, maiden, I have said what the reasons were, why at sea we little cooked meat ate. Sigrun, to a battle thou alludest. Before Helgi was king, Hunding had been doomed to fall. In conflict ye have engaged, when your kindred ye avenged, and stained with blood the falchion's edge. Helgi, why dost thou suppose, sagacious maiden, that it was they who their kin avenged? Many a warrior's bold sons there are, and hostile to our kindred. Sigrun, I was not far, leader of people, eager, at many a chieftain's end, yet crafty I account Sigmund's son, when in Valrunes the slaughter he announces. A while ago I saw thee commanding the warships when thou hadst station on the bloody prow, and the cold sea waves were playing. Now, prince, thou wilt from me conceal it, but Hogni's daughter recognizes thee. Granmar was the name of a powerful prince who dwelt at Svarinshaug. He had many sons. One was called Hodbrod, the second Gudmund, the third Starkadr. Hodbrod was at the assembly of kings, and there betrothed to himself to Sigrun, the daughter of Hogni. But when she was informed of it, she rode with the Valkyrie through the air and over the sea in the quest of Helgi. Helgi was at the time at Logafjol, warring against the sons of Hunding, where he slew Alf and Eyjolf, Hiorvard and Hervard. Being over-fatigued with the conflict, he was sitting under the Arastein, where Sigrun found him, and running to him, threw her arms around his neck, and, kissing him, told him her errand, so as it related in the first Volsung Kvidda. Sigrun sought the joyous prince. Helgi's hand she forthwith grasped, kissed, and addressed the helm-decked king. Then was the chieftain's mind to the lady turned. She declared that she had loved with her whole heart Sigmund's son, before she had seen him. To Hodbrod I was in the assembly betrothed, but I another prince would have. Yet, chieftain, I foresee my kindred's wrath. I have my father's promise broken. Hogni's daughter spoke not at variance with her heart. She said that Helgi's affection she must possess. Cow thou not for Hogni's wrath, nor for the evil mind of thy kin. Thou shalt, young maiden, live with me. Of a good race thou art, as I perceive. Helgi then collected a large fleet and proceeded to Frekastein, and at sea experienced a perilous storm. Lightnings came over them, and the flashes entered the ships. They saw that 9 Valkyrie were riding in the air, and recognized Sigrun among them. The storm then abated, and they reached land in safety. The sons of Granmar were sitting on a hill as the ships were sailing towards the land. Gudmund leapt on a horse and rode to explore on the hill by the haven. The Volsungs then lowered their sails, and Gudmund spoke as is before written in the Helga Kvidda. Who is the leader that commands the fleet, and an appalling host leads to our land? This said Gudmund, Granmar's son. Who is the warrior that commands the ships, and lets his golden banner wave o'er his prow? No peace seems to me in that ship's front. It casts a warlike glow round the Vikings. Sinfjotli, Sigmund's son, answered, Here may Hodbrod Helgi learn to know the hard of flight in the fleet's midst. He the possession holds of thy race, he the fish's heritage has to him subjected. Gudmund, therefore ought we first at Frekastein to settle together, and decide our quarrels. Hodbrod, 'tis time vengeance to take, if an inferior lot we long have borne. Sinfjotli, rather shalt thou, Gudmund, 10 goats and steep mountain tops shall climb. Have in thy hand a hazel staff, that will better please thee than judgments of the sword. Gudmund rode home with intelligence of the hostile armament, whereupon the sons of Granmar collected a host, and many kings came thither. Among them were Hogni, the father of Sigrun, with his sons Bragi and Dag. There was a great battle, and all the sons of Hogni and all their chiefs were slain, except Dag, who obtained peace and swore oaths to the Volsungs. Sigrun, going among the slain, found Hodbrod at the point of death. She said, Not will Sigrun a Sephafiol, King Hodbrod, sink in thy arms. Thy life is departed. Off the axe's blade the head approaches of Granmar's sons. She then met Helgi, and was overjoyed. He said, Not to thee, all-wise maiden, are all things granted, though I say in somewhat are the Norns to blame. This morn have fallen at Frekastein Bragi and Hogni. I was their slayer. But at Styrkleifar, King Starkadr, and at Leibiorg, the son of Hrolog, that prince I saw of almost fierce, whose trunk yet fought when the head was far. On the earth lie the greater number of thy kinsmen, to corpses turned. Thou hast not fought the battle, yet 'twas decreed that thou, potent maiden, shouldst cause the strife. Sigrun then wept. Helgi said: Sigrun, console thyself. A held thou hast been to us. Kings cannot conquer fate. Gladly would I have them living who are departed, if I might clasp thee to my breast. Helgi obtained Sigrun, and they had sons. Helgi lived not to be old. Dag, the son of Hogni, sacrificed to Odin for vengeance for his father. Odin lent Dag his spear. Dag met with his relation Helgi in a place called Fjoturlund, and pierced him through with his spear. Helgi fell there, but Dag rode to the mountains and told Sigrun what had taken place. Loath am I, sister, sad news to tell thee, for unwillingly I have my sister cause to weep. This morning fell in Fjoturlund the prince who was on earth the best, and on the necks of warriors stood. Sigrun, thee shall the oaths all gnaw, which to Helgi thou didst swear, in the limpid Leipter's water, and at the cold drink wave-washed rock. May the ship not move forward which under thee should move, although wished-for wind behind thee blow. May the horse not run which under thee should run, although from enemies thou hast to flee. May the sword not bite which thou drawst, unless it sing round thy own head. Then would Helgi's death be on thee avenged, if a wolf thou wert, out in the woods, of all good bereft, and every joy, have no sustenance, unless on corpses thou shouldst spring. Dag, sister, thou ravest, and hast lost thy wits, when on thy brother thou callest down such miseries. Odin alone is a cause of all evil, for between relatives he brought the runes of strife. Thy brother offers thee rings of red gold, all Vindisve and Vigdalir, have half the land thy grief to compensate, woman ring adorned, thou and thy sons. Sigrun, so happily I shall not sit at Sefafioll, neither at morn nor night, as to feel joy in life, if o'er the people plays not the prince's beam of light. If his war steed runs not under the chieftain hither, to the gold bit accustomed, if in the king I cannot rejoice. So had Helgi struck with fear all his foes and their kindred, as before the wolf the goat run frantic from the fell, of terror full. So himself Helgi among warriors bore, as the towering ashes among thorns, or as the fawn, moistened with dew, that more proudly stalks than all the other beasts, and its horns glisten against the sky. A mound was raised for Helgi, but when he came to Valhall, Odin offered him the rule over all jointly with himself. Helgi said: Thou, Hunding, shalt for every man a footbath get, and fire kindle, shalt bind the dogs to the horses look, to the swine give wash, ere to sleep thou goest. A female slave, passing at evening by Helgi's mound, saw him riding towards it with many men. Is it a delusion which methinks I see, or the power's dissolution, that ye dead men ride, and your horses with spurs urge on, or to warriors is a home journey granted? Helgi, 'tis no delusion which thou thinkst to see, nor of mankind the end, although thou seest us, although our horses we with spurs urge on, nor to warriors is a home journey granted. The slave went home and said to Sigrun: Sigrun, go forth from Sefafioll, if the people's chief thou desirest to meet. The mound is opened, Helgi is come, his wounds still bleed, the prince prayed thee that thou wouldst still the trickling blood. Sigrun entered the mound to Helgi and said: Now am I as glad, at our meeting, as the voracious hawks of Odin, when they of slaughter know, of warm prey, or dewy-feathered see the peep of day. I will kiss my lifeless king ere thou thy bloody corslet layest aside. Thy hair is, Helgi, tumid with sweat of death. My prince is all bathed in slaughtered dew. Cold clammy are the hands of Hogni's son. How shall I, prince, for this make thee amends? Helgi, thou art alone the cause, Sigrun of Sefafioll, that Helgi is with sorrow's dew suffused. Thou weepest gold-adorned, cruel tears, sun-bright daughter of the south. Ere to sleep thou goest, each one falls bloody on the prince's breast, wet, cold, and piercing with sorrow big. We shall surely drink delicious draughts, though we have lost life and lands. No one shall a song of mourning sing, though on my breast he wounds behold. Now are women in the mound enclosed, daughters of kings, with us the dead. Sigrun prepares the bed in the mound. Here, Helgi, have I for thee a peaceful couch prepared, for the Ylfing's son. On thy breast I will, chieftain, repose as in my hero's lifetime I was wont. Helgi, nothing I now declare unlooked for, at Sefafioll, late or early, since in a corpse's arms thou sleepest, Hogni's fair daughter, in a mound, and thou art living, daughter of kings. Time 'tis for me to ride on the reddening ways. Let the pale horse tread the aerial path. I towards the rest must go, Vindhjalm's bridge, ere Salgofnir awakens heroes. Helgi and his attendants rode their way, but Sigrun and hers proceeded to their habitation. The following evening Sigrun ordered her serving maid to hold watch at the mound. But at nightfall, when Sigrun came thither, she said: "Now would he come, if he to come intended, Sigmund's son from Odin's halls. I think the hope lessens of the king's coming, since on the ashes boughs the eagles sit, and all the folk to the dream's tryst are hastening." Serving maid. Be not so rash alone to go, daughter of heroes, to the house of Draugs. More powerful are in the night season all dead warriors than in the light of day. Sigrun's life was shortened by grief and mourning. It was a belief in ancient times that men were regenerated, but that is now regarded as an old crone's fancy. Helgi and Sigrun are said to have been regenerated. He was then called Helgi Haddinskiadi, and she Kara Halfdan's daughter, as it is said in the songs of Kara, and she was also a Valkyrie. Footnote: the superstition commemorated in this strophe is, no doubt, the origin of some very beautiful ballads in the later literature of Scandinavia and Germany referring to this superstition. When thou, my dear, art cheerful and easy in thy mind, the coffin where I slumber is all with roses lined. But oft as thou art in sorrow, and bowed with grief so sore, and all the while my coffin brim full of blood and gore. Recording by Becky Cook. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org.